Book of the Dead becoming God in ancient Egypt. Production and use. How a Book of the Dead manuscript was produced. Script and vignettes. Part 2. Headings, opening formulae and certain other elements were habitually written in red, while the main text of the spells was executed in black. The rubrics were added in a second step after the black text was written. Sometimes the rubrics were forgotten in comparison to papyri. Red ink is only rarely found in Book of the Dead documents on mummy wrappings. Exceptionally, white pigment was used to overwrite the original red hieratic text on an amuletic papyrus of the 19th dynasty with a single Book of the Dead spell. The illuminations of the Book of the Dead, the so-called vignettes, are no mere decorative elements. They transmit the content of a spell in a condensed form and thus intensify the magical power of the spell to which they belong. The first Book of the Dead documents in the proper sense, which are preserved on large sheets of mummy linen from the dawn of the New Kingdom, do only consist of text without illustrations. Since the mid-18th dynasty, illumination is a regular feature, and about 50% of all Book of the Dead copies have vignettes. Polychrome vignettes occur only on papyrus and on some 18th dynasty linen sheets, whereas they are very uncommon on the late period and Ptolemaic narrow mummy bandages. A few vignettes are conventionally scaled to full page size. Most have a much smaller format and occupy considerably less space than the text to which they belong. Frequently, the vignettes show traces of preparatory sketches in red which were covered by the final version in black. First the draft was drawn in red outline, then the colors were applied, and then the final black outline was added. Sometimes all vignettes, sometimes only the large vignettes, colored. Among the minerals for pigments that have been identified are Egyptian blue, potassium lead chloride plus calcite white, and potassium lead chloride plus hematite pink, but also precious substances like cinnabar red/red orange, realgar, and orpiment yellow. Gilding was used occasionally for certain details of the figures in New Kingdom, late period, and Ptolemaic Book of the Dead images. Texts and illustrations were carried out in 2 consecutive steps. Presumably these tasks lay in the responsibility of 2 different specialists, a scribe and a draftsman, though it cannot be ruled out that the same person produced both texts and illustrations, one after the other. The order was not fixed. We know of unfinished Book of the Dead documents in which only the vignettes have been executed. The draftsman had begun and the text should have been written in another step, yet was never added. Other papyri bear texts of spells, but did not or just partly receive their images. In the 26th dynasty papyrus of Unspacify, only the vignette of spell 1 was begun. Due to work sharing during the manufacturing process, it could happen that texts and vignettes were not properly coordinated, so a spell would not receive its prescribed image and vice versa. As an attempt to avoid misplacements, We encounter occasionally different sorts of notes, which offered some guidance to the draftsman as to where he should add which vignette or where he should not draw an image. In a third intermediate period papyrus, short marginalia hieroglyphic marks give information about what image had to be added as vignette, such as falcon, lotus, bark, and others. The papyrus of Kama bears a more general short, hieratic instruction to insert the vignettes into the empty allocated spaces in accordance with the accompanying texts. In Book of the Dead Papyrus Berlin p. 3026, the compartments left empty for receiving the vignettes were numbered in red from 1 to 66 by the scribe, as some sort of help for the draftsman who would know from the numeration which illustration he should add. A demotic note in a blank area, the lower spell of Papyrus Ryerson had quite the opposite intention. It marked an area where no vignette should be filled in, stating it is not an empty space for a picture. Other short notes were added for the purpose of controlling completeness. To this group belong the numbers on the beginning of Book of the Dead mummy bandages, and also a notice, which confirms that the spell text is written on the end of the bandage, after the long vignette of spell 17 at the beginning of the wrapping.